If you want to start a conversation with anyone in the asteroid business, all you have to say is Tunguska. 114 years ago, a massive explosion in Siberia became a huge topic in the field of astronomy. It baffled both scientists and civilians, and today, we'll talk about the mystery that surrounds the Tunguska explosion. In the early hours of June 30, 1908, a gigantic fireball destroyed the entirety of an uninhabited forest in a remote area of eastern Siberia near the Tunguska River. The enormous explosion had a powerful impact, an estimated 10 to 30 megatons, equivalent to the blast energy of the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. Over 80 million trees were destroyed in the Tunguska explosion, which spanned 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest. A shockwave knocked people off their feet and tore leaves and branches from trees as the fireball streaked across the sky and scorched everything in its path before laying a large forest flat. Photos of trees that resemble bare telegraph poles, all pointing away from the impact site, show the size and force of the collision. High above the area, dense clouds developed, reflecting the sun as it rose above the horizon. And it's not just Siberia. Multiple seismometers around the world recorded the impact, which measured as high as 5.0 on the Richter scale in some places. Sensitive barometers as far away as England registered the seismic shockwave that resulted. People as far away as Asia and Europe were reportedly able to read newspapers outside until midnight as the night sky glowed. In the US, the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory and the Mount Wilson Observatory both observed a sharp reduction in atmospheric transparency that persisted for months because of all the suspended dust particles in the air due to the blast. Before getting further in today's video, thank you for hanging out and watching with me today. My name is James and this is the restricted section. We upload 3 times per week. If you enjoy stories like this one, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upload. I know this gets annoying, but it really does help. If there are any topics you would like to see in future videos, please let me know in the comment section down below. Following the blast, the director of the Irkutsk Meteorological Observatory, whose seismographs captured the impact, sent questionnaires to local witnesses before compiling their answers and publishing them in 1924. According to G.K. Kalesh, a local teacher who may have also worked at the meteorological station, some people believed that the world was ending. Kalesh, who was preoccupied in his office, initially mistook the meteor hit for a military drill. Kalesh was quoted saying, "The fire pillar was seen by many, and its shape in the form of a spear is also known. The smoke or the grey cloud, which later passed into the dark, was also noticed by many. I could not ascertain when the glass was shaking in houses. During strokes, before or after them, the strongest blows were the last, and the concussion of the hot air was strong. The people of this village were so overwhelmed by the blows that they sent a deputation to the local archpriest to ask if the apocalypse was beginning, so as to prepare for it in Kerensky. That there was a concussion on the ground, which I could conclude from the fact that the barograph noted a line on the tape, and I firmly remember that no stranger entered the room, and I did not get up from my place, so I could not push the device. I heard the blows, but since the windows were covered to the northwest and opened only on the south, I took the blows for volleys of rifle shots in the military field." Others were quoted describing the sensation of the impact as, "I heard a sound like dynamite exploding rocks, and repeated shots of big guns, with a terrible crash and frequent noise, passed from west to east, and towards the north." Others described the feeling of the impact as a strong underground rumble like a thunder peal, or, in the words of one meteorological officer, terrible thunder in a clear sky, like a cannon. From a closer distance of 200 kilometers, more witnesses provided a more accurate description of the object itself, although unreliable colors were mentioned as the blast may have an iridescence like flame. People mentioned colors including white, red, flame-like, and bluish-white. It was described as a diffuse light ball that was 2 or 3 times bigger than the sun, but not as bright, and it had a fiery white band as a trail. The destruction of a vast forest area could be seen on the ground. Tree limbs were stripped from the trees at ground zero, leaving the trunks standing. The trees, however, were blown over and lying with their tops pointing away from the impact site at distances between 3 and 10 kilometers. Nobody was ever known to have been so close to the explosion. Herders who camped in tents about 30 kilometers from the epicenter were most likely the nearest humans. The area's numerous storage huts and camping sites were all destroyed. In the general vicinity of Ground Zero, hundreds of reindeer were slaughtered, and eyewitness reports suggest that at least 3 people may have died in the event. But the most interesting fact about this incident, the explosion left no crater or meteorite fragment. The lack of any meteorites led to a century of speculation over the blast's causes, and the disaster has given rise to a ton of theories. The Tunguska event is mysterious and significant because previous collisions with extraterrestrial bodies have had major impact on the evolution of the Earth. 65 million years ago, a massive asteroid 1 billion times more destructive than the nuclear bombs that destroyed Nagasaki and Hiroshima were unleashed. It was so massive and fast that it tore 20 miles into the Earth's surface before exploding with such force that everything within thousands of miles of it was instantly vaporized. Additionally, the explosion blacked out the sky for 2 years, preventing sunlight from penetrating the surface due to the enormous amounts of vapor, earth boulders, and fire that were released into the atmosphere. The impact killed 70% of all species on Earth, including the dinosaurs. In July 1994, several astronomical observatories captured the spectacular collision of a comet with Jupiter. This is the first direct observation of a collision between two extraterrestrial objects in the solar system. This resulted in extensive media coverage, and astronomers all around the world closely monitored the comet. In September 2007, Peruvian villagers watched in terror as an object streaked across the sky and landed not far away with a loud boom, leaving a 20-foot deep, 98-foot wide crater and causing 200 people from the location to suffer a mysterious illness. Over the Russian city of Chelyabinsk in 2013, an asteroid with a diameter of roughly 20 meters entered Earth's atmosphere. It detonated while it was still in the air, delivering 500 kilotons of TNT worth of energy. Fortunately, it burst around 30 kilometers above the surface and avoided any direct impacts. However, it sent a shockwave through 6 cities, inflicting 1,500 injuries and caused damage to 7,200 buildings. People who witnessed the brilliant flash and went to windows to look outside were the ones who sustained the majority of injuries. And then there's the Allen Hills 84001, a fragment of a Martian meteorite. A massive asteroid collision caused the rock to be blown from the surface of Mars around 15 million years ago, and it eventually fell into Antarctica about 13,000 years ago. Despite only weighing 176 grams, this rock's impact was great because it allegedly showed evidence of extraterrestrial life. Well, that was the hypothesis put forth by NASA scientists in 1996, and it was such a bold assertion that even the US president at the time, Bill Clinton, made it the subject of a press conference the day the discovery was made. But to explore the mysteries surrounding the Tunguska explosion, it would be more than 10 years before the first scientific mission was able to successfully examine the blast site, despite the fact that the dramatic occurrence undoubtedly received its fair share of public attention, particularly from Russian newspapers. All of this complicated data gathering certainly heightened the mystery surrounding the tragedy. In 1921, the chief curator of the St. Petersburg Museum's meteorite collection, Leonid Kulik, organized an expedition to Tunguska. The group was guided to the basin of the Podkamenia Tunguska River by Kulik. He heard the many local stories of the explosion while conducting research for the Soviet Academy of Sciences. He then persuaded the Soviet authorities to sponsor an excursion to the area to potentially recover any meteoric iron because he thought it had been produced by a massive meteorite. However, his team's attempt to get to the blast site was hindered by the challenging terrain of the Siberian outback. The locals believed that Agda, the thunder god, had sent the Tunguska blast to punish the Evenki tribe for its internal conflict. It took over 2 decades before the first scientific missions arrived because they declared the bomb site to be a sacred sanctuary and carefully protected it from outsiders. Trying again in 1927, Leonid Kulik once more led a group to the location. When he arrived, he was surprised to discover that there was no impact crater. At the epicenter of the blast in the forest of Tunguska, some dead and charred trees were amazingly still standing. Scientists estimate that the Tunguska event released the energy equivalent of around 185 nuclear bombs, which is identical to what occurred in Hiroshima, Japan, following the explosion of a nuclear weapon in 1945. Trees further away had started to fall in a radial pattern away from the blast center. The Tunguska event, according to Kulik's team, was caused by an asteroid or comet, but it didn't leave a crater. The researchers came to the conclusion that the rock must have burst in the Earth's atmosphere to account for this. For nearly a century, this was the leading explanation. However, experts provided an update in 2020. Daniel Krennikov and colleagues from Russia's Siberian Federal University have published a new model of the incident that may finally solve the mystery. According to Krennikov and his colleagues, the explosion was caused by an asteroid that grazed the Earth, entered the atmosphere at a shallow angle, and then passed back out into space. Krennikov and his colleagues simulated the effect of meteorites made of rock, metal, or ice traveling at a speed of 12 miles per second through the atmosphere. They discovered that the explosion was caused by an iron meteorite the size of a football stadium. This must have passed through the upper atmosphere, heated up quickly, and then returned to the solar system. This trajectory shockwave was responsible for flattening the trees. The shockwave would have caused a small explosion, and any vaporized iron would have condensed into dust that would have been indistinguishable on the ground. Importantly, no visible asteroid remnants would have resulted from this scenario. If Krennikov and his colleagues are correct, Earth had a lucky close call that morning. A direct hit by a 656-foot wide asteroid would have annihilated Siberia, leaving a crater 2 miles wide. It would also have had disastrous consequences for the biosphere, possibly bringing modern civilization to an end. There's about 48.5 tons of meteoric debris that falls to the Earth every day. On any given night, several meteors per hour are typically visible because almost all of the material is vaporized in Earth's atmosphere, leaving a bright trail that is popularly known as shooting stars. On average, asteroids with a diameter of 1 kilometer strike Earth once every 500,000 years. Large collisions with objects of 5 kilometers or more occur about once every 20 million years. The average frequency of Tunguska-style asteroidal collisions range between 1 in 200 and 1 in 1,000 years. As a result, a similar strike is not out of the question during our lifetime. Fortunately, the Tunguska impact occurred in an unpopulated part of the world. The entire metropolitan area would be destroyed if something similar exploded above New York City. Thanks again for hanging out with me and watching today. My name is James and this is the restricted section. We upload 3 times per week. If you enjoy stories like this one, please like the video, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads. Again, I understand this can be annoying, but it truly does help the channel with the YouTube algorithm. If there's any topics you'd like to see in future videos, please let me know in the comments section down below. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.